This week, Parashat Va'etchanan. This recording is Erev Tisha B'Av, before Tisha B'Av. But this week we talked about the 10 commandments. And more specifically, we talked about the commandment of honoring your parents. And we know the 2 points. First of all, this commandment is written together with its reward. Leman yarichun yamecha, your days will be longer. And we asked a very obvious question. How come this commandment gets a reward with it, unlike many commandments in the Torah? But more than that, we pointed out that this commandment seems to always be connected to Shabbos. Not only in the 10 commandments, but also in other places in the Torah. So what is that about? Why is honoring your parents connected to keeping Shabbos?
Yeah, we saw how this reward may not only be a reward, may also actually be part of what this mitzvah is all about. And through that, we were actually able to begin to understand the connection between Shabbos and honoring your parents, and how these two mitzvahs go hand in hand together and build who we are as a person.
Exactly. Maybe this Leman Yarichun Yamecha is not only a reward, it's actually a lot more than that. Make sure you take a look. Hope you enjoy it. So yeah, it's Erev Tisha B'Av, an early release this week because tomorrow is Tisha B'Av. So this week for Parashat Va'etchanan, one of the famous psukim we find in this week's parasha are the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments that we find Moshe retelling over again. And as we've said many times in Sefer Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he retells the different stories, the different commandments from the past that we learned in the different Sfarim, many times he changes a little bit or modifies a little bit the different commandments, the different stories, in order to point out other lessons, different lessons than what we have already learned. And we find that too in this week's parasha, in the Aseret HaDibrot, that also in them, in the 10 commandments, they are the same 10 commandments we find in Sefer Shemot, but he changes around a little bit of the wording, he adds a few things in, he takes away a few things. And what I want to talk about this week is the commandment of honoring your parents, of Kibud Av Va'em. That is the 5th commandment of the 10 Dibrot, because very interestingly, we have to point out 2 things. First of all, this is the only commandment that appears in the Aseret HaDibrot, and generally among a lot of the commandments in the Torah, that comes with the reward that it offers. And you really have to ask why. Why does honoring your parents, why does the commandment of honoring your parents is written together with the reward of Leman Yarichun Yamecha, your days will be longer? What does it mean, your days will be longer? What is this reward actually really about? But on top of that, actually, when you take a look at Aseret HaDibrot, of course you will notice that in both cases, Kibud Horim, Kibud Av Va'em, honoring your parents, comes right after the commandment of Shabbos, the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. And not only is it like that in Aseret HaDibrot, actually in Sefer Va'ikra, we also were commandment on honoring your parents, in not only honoring, but fearing. Ish imo ve'aviv tirau. You have to fear your parents, and connected to that, the pasuk over there teaches us also, et shabtotai tishmo. So also there we see that Shabbos is connected to Kibud Horim. And it's not only in the psukim, we also find it in the Gemara, in Chazal. Chazal teach us that, for example, in Marash, Sham Sam Lo Chok Mishpat V'Sham Nisau, Chazal teach us, what did Am Yisrael learn in Mara in the beginning when they left Egypt? Over there they got the commandments, the mitzvahs of Kibud Horim, honoring your parents, and Shabbos. And also there Chazal connect those 2 mitzvahs together. So we really have to ask, what is the connection between the 2? Why is Kibud Horim always connected to the mitzvah of Shabbos? So to recap, 2 very specific questions. Why does honoring your parents show up together with its reward? What is this reward about? And more than that, why is it always connected to the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos?
Interesting. Maybe I'll start with the end. Leman Yarichun Yamech. What will be from keeping this mitzvah? And looking in Yitro, this is a big question, but maybe the hint to the answer is actually here in our parsha. Because as you said, just before Kibud Horim, we have the mitzvah of Shabbat. And there, this time, in Va'etchanan, we also see the term Leman. Leman yanuach avdecha va'amatcha kamocha. That your slaves will also rest on the Shabbos like you. Clearly there, we're not talking about the reward. It's not the reward of Shabbos is that your slaves will rest. It's the result of Shabbos. It's part of what Shabbos is about, is that your slaves will rest with you, that everyone will rest. Everyone will be the same. Everyone will be part of this rest. So maybe also in honoring your parents, Leman Yarichun Yamecha is not the reward. It's part of what the mitzvah itself is about. And what do I mean by that? I think what the Torah is telling us here is that honoring your parents is not for your parent. It's not about, okay, your parents did something good to you. It's you should have gratitude to other people. It's something deeper than that. It's saying that for your future, for you to succeed in having a future, having a present and a future, you need to recognize your past. You need to respect your past. Don't think that you're here in the world, it's all about you. It starts with you, it ends with you, and here you're gonna go and succeed. Ignore everything that's around you. Let's just focus on building and doing. You're gonna fall apart. You won't succeed. To really have a future, you have to recognize your past. You have to honor your past. You have to honor even your most basic individual past. It starts from honoring your parents, recognizing that they brought you into this world. They brought you to where you are now, and therefore everything you're doing from now on is built upon that. When you recognize that past, you remember and honor that past, then you're really able to build upon that. Then you will have a future. You don't have a past, you won't have a future. This isn't a reward. This is part of what this mitzvah is all about. And I think when we look at it like that, we can also understand the connection to Shabbos. In Shabbos, at least here in Aseret HaDibrot, we have two different versions. We have the version in Yitro where the focus is the creation of the world, where by doing Shabbos, I'm recognizing, I'm resting just as HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested when he created the world. And here the focus is something else entirely. When I rest, then my slaves will rest. Which is strange thinking of that all of Shabbos is just so my slaves could rest. But it's more than that. We continue and say, just like we came out of Mitzrayim and we were slaves, there's something about Shabbos that's not only recognizing that I was created by God, but it's also recognizing my limits in this world. Yeah, I have slaves, but no, they're not really my slave. On Shabbos, they're going to be just like you. And that's the word that's used here. It doesn't just say that your slaves will rest, they'll rest like you. They're just like you. Yeah, maybe during the week, things look a little different, but it's not like that. You have your limits. So we almost have those two sides. Recognize where you came from. Recognize that the world doesn't start with you, but also recognize that the world doesn't end with you. There's a world around you. Recognize you work 6 days, but then you stop because God stopped, because now we need to recognize that there's limits to things. And I think we have those two aspects also with parents. One is, of course, recognize that they created you. Recognize that the world didn't start with you. It started with them. Someone brought you into this world. If you don't honor your parents, it's like you think you've always been here and it's all about you. Move the center from you. It's not about you. Someone brought you here. Recognize that. But also, it doesn't end with you. Your parents are the ones, and as you mentioned in Vayikra, we have the term of fearing your parents. There's also that element. And that's not just about honoring or recognizing that they brought you into this world. It's also about listening to them and respecting what they're telling you. And every child from a young age, you have your parent who creates the rules for you, who teaches you the rules within this world. They're the ones who create those limits. This you should do, this you shouldn't do. They're the ones who teach you that the world doesn't end. Not only doesn't start with you, also doesn't end with what you feel and what you want and what's, you're up to. No, there are rules, there are family rules, there are rules in the world. And it's interesting actually because also in Shabbos, we have those two versions. We have Zachor, remember, which maybe is similar to recognizing. We have that when we talk about the creation of the world in Yitro. And we also have the Shamor, which is keeping things, creating borders for things, which is interesting because in Vayikra, when we talk about the parents, we say, Ishimo vaviv tirau ve'et shavtotai tishmoru. We have the Shamor of the Shabbos together with the Shamor, or the Yirah, the fear of the parents, the side of the parents creating those boundaries, those limitations, the rules within this world. So I think that's what's happening here. And maybe this isn't only why Shabbos and honoring your parents go together. It's also why honoring your parents is there in the 10 Commandments altogether. Meaning we don't have any other mitzvot bein adam lechavero in the 10 Commandments that are positive mitzvot. We have don't kill, don't steal, but we don't have positive things. We have positive things like keeping Shabbat, but not between people. This is the one mitzvah that's chosen. Why is it the one mitzvah that's chosen? Think it's the key to everything else. Someone who sees and thinks that the world goes around him, what he wants, what he feels, what he wants to do, there's no limits. Not murder, not stealing, nothing. Everything is his, everything is about him. The key to everything else is recognizing where you came from, recognizing your limitations in this world, and therefore recognizing your purpose and what you are supposed to do in this world. That's the key to achieving Leman Yarichun Yamecha Al Adama. To really be able to build a future and a positive future, you need that recognition.
Very good, very good. Like you're saying, the chinuch over here in Kibud Horim, Kibud Abahim, brings Mishorshei mitzvah, brings the reasoning behind the mitzvah. He says that we will learn to have have gratitude towards the people that brought us into the world, the people who gave us life, and following that provided for us and helped us grow up and become who we are, and show gratitude to them, and through that realize the gratitude that we have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which really, when you think about it, sounds very logical and very simple and very understandable, that you have to show recognition and don't be ungrateful, kfui tova v'naval, like the chinuch says over there also. And it makes a lot of sense to have this mitzvah, but really, like we know, the mitzvahs were not only commanded out of the sense, out of logic that we have, but they actually also came to bring something new into this world, to bring a new concept, a new idea into this world. And just like today, when we grow up in our society today, resting is a very understandable thing. You need a day of rest, you need an hour of rest. Resting makes your work more productive. It doesn't make sense to work 24/7, 365 days a year. It doesn't make any sense today to work like that. Everybody knows it doesn't work. However, when we go back in time, one of the biggest chidushim Am Yisrael brought to the world was Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu, they came over to Paro and told him, if you give the Jews a day of rest, a day to rest, then they will be able to work and be more productive. And then later on, when Moshe Rabbeinu came back and Paro vatichbada melacha made the workload even more, even harder, that's when he took away that day of rest, like the Midrash tells us. This Shabbos, this concept of Shabbos, was brought into the world through the commandment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through the tzivur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even though it seems extremely logical and extremely makes sense, it was still commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu for us to keep, because it gives us this other layer to life of meaning. Like we keep on saying in our videos all the time, we need a higher level of meaning in our life in order to live a good life. You look around, you see people that are trying to figure out their lives, trying to figure out the meaning in life, because everybody needs a greater meaning to live for. And all these mitzvahs, all these commandments that we get, many of them are logical. Some of them are chukim that we don't understand at all, but all of them are there to add that level of holiness, to add that level of meaning into our life, to give us a greater purpose to live by, to give us a greater goal to aspire to. This is what these mitzvahs are about. And just like that's what Shabbos gave us, Shabbos turned our daily melacha, our daily work, into our shlichut, into our message that we have to bring into the world, the message with a meaning, with a purpose. Same thing with honoring your parents. Honoring your parents may sound very logical, may make a lot of sense, but there's something extremely special and holy and elevated behind the message of honoring your parents, because we know that the Gemara teaches us, Shlosha shutafim be'adam, there are three partners in a human being: his father, his mother, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and God himself, who got together with the father and mother in order to create life. This is what being a parent actually means. When you become a parent, you get the zchut, you get the merit to sign a partnership with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How crazy does that sound? HaKadosh Baruch Hu lowering himself and creating a partnership with human beings in order to create life. This is what kibud horim means. When you honor your parents, through that, you honor HaKadosh Baruch Hu too, like you were saying, because Shlosha shutafim ba'adam, because there are three partners in creating the human being. This is what kibud horim is about. And maybe this is also why the Gemara continues on in Kiddushin over there to teach us that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to the rest of the world and offered them the 10 commandments, they all said, oh, he wants these commandments only for his own honor, only so that human beings will honor him. And until he got to kibud avayim, once they saw that he is also demanding honor for the parents, then the rest of the world said, oh, okay, it's not only about him, but it's also about the parents. Because in the end of the day, we live in this world, we live in the society around us, and in order to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in order to recognize the greater meaning, the greater purpose, the greater goal that we have for ourselves in our life, we have to start with the simple goals, with the simple meanings, with the simple gratitude that we have to show the people around us. The simple gratitude that starts with the most simple relationship we have, with the most obvious relationship we have, which is our parents. Through that, through honoring our parents, through showing the gratitude to our parents, again, in that most logical, simple relationship that we have, through that most obvious commandment, that's where you start in order to elevate yourself, push yourself up towards that holiness, towards finding that greater purpose. And if you don't have that most basic understanding that that gratitude that you have to show to your parents is one of the most basic things you have to do in life, then you can't expect yourself to be elevated to the higher levels, to find that higher purpose. And it's true about your parents, and it's true about the entire society around you that you are part of. If you don't understand that you are part of this society, and the society around you has rules, written rules, and has unwritten rules that you have to live by, and you have to respect them, and you have to be part of them. Part of that is, like you were saying, that everybody gets to rest on Shabbos. and part of that is being part of a healthy society, then you can't expect to elevate your life, to find that greater purpose, to find that greater meaning in life. Maybe this is what all these 10 commandments are about, is about going to these simple things that sound so obvious, sound so logical and so simple, yet this is the way we get to bring holiness into our life. We get to bring a greater meaning into our life. Maybe this is why Moshe Rabbeinu adds here, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem, to tell us that even though it sounds very logical and simple and a very earthly thing to do, to show gratitude to your parents, still this is commanded from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because it elevates us to the highest levels of holiness. Maybe also this is why the most famous story we know about Kibud Horim in Shas, the story we learn in kindergarten from the Midrash also, is the story of Dama ben Nitina, the person who wasn't a Jew, who showed so much respect to his parent, to his father, when the sages came over to buy from him the stone for the choshen, for the ephod, for what the Kohen Gadol used to wear. He didn't want to wake up his parent, and because he showed that respect to his father, later on HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewarded him with a para aduma, showing us these two mitzvot. The mitzvah, again, on the one hand of Kibud Horim, which is the most, again, logical mitzvah, but on the other hand, para aduma, which we know is the chok, is the example for the ones that we don't understand, that we can't comprehend, that makes no sense. These two mitzvahs, in the end of the day, were both commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, were both given to us on Har Sinai, and all of the mitzvahs together is what elevates us when we keep them. This is what brings the greater meaning into life. This is also what makes society also a lot healthier and drives us forward as a society towards the greater goal.
Interesting. You mentioned Kasher Tzivcha Hashem Elokecha, that addition that Moshe added here. But there's another thing that Moshe adds. He adds the words Lemani Tavlach, so that it shall be good for you. Very interesting words, but I think what Moshe is saying is something very interesting. You may think that having gratitude towards your parents, honoring your parents, is about your parents. You may think that you really want to do your thing and you want to move forward, but it's not respectful to do that without first honoring your parents, and that's great. But I think what Moshe is saying, it's the other way around. It's not about your parents. It's about you. For you to be you, for you to build what you need to build, and as you're saying, for you to elevate, for you to reach where you need to reach, you have to honor your parents. As we said, Leman yarichun yamecha, for you to have future, you have to honor. It's about you. You can't achieve who you need to be if you think you're just going to throw out everything else and start it all from you. And this connects also to the Midrash you were saying, where they looked at the mitzvot at the beginning and they said, oh, well, God wants us to respect him. And when they got to Kibud Horim, they saw it differently. Maybe it's more than that. It's saying that all of the mitzvot, it's not about God. We're not honoring God so God will be happy and feel honored. It's about us. It's what it builds in us. It's how it resets our mindset and how we live in this world. Lemani tavlach, for you. You need to have the respect for your parents. You need to recognize what they're building for you and what they're teaching you. You need to recognize that God created the world, your parent, as you said, and God has those limitations for you. Within those limitations of Shabbos, and recognizing where you come from, recognizing that the world doesn't focus around you, there you can actually grow better, elevate yourself, and really reach your meaning and your purpose in this world.
Very good, very good. Exactly. There's so much more we can talk about, but we'll end here because we're out of time and it's going to be Tisha B'Av soon. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it around, like it, comment below, tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and help us grow the channel. The past couple of years, we talked about different aspects in Parashat Va'etchanan, from the davening of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's davening, as we know, wasn't accepted in the end of the day. So why is that the model of davening that we follow? Because we learned a lot of halachas out of that davening. Another video, we discussed the very famous pasuk that became a davening, that became everything, the pasuk of Shema Yisrael. Why did that pasuk become so fundamental in our lives? What is that all about? We'll link those two videos. And Yitzi, Bezrat Hashem, Mirz Hashem, by next week, Beis HaMikdash should be built, and we should all celebrate in Yerushalayim Babnuya, Bezrat Hashem, and Shkoyach.
Amen, amen. Shkoyach, B'sarot Tovot, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and Mirz Hashem. We'll talk again next week.